started. Welcome again, everybody. Josh Liu and Phil Catchpole, and this is EFL Through American Eyes. I'm the actual American. You can probably tell that from the accent. You're going to very much be able to tell it from Phil that he's not from these parts in just a moment. And I like it, Phil, that, by the way, you've just put Phil up as your identifying. I mean, it's kind of like Cher or Charo or Beyonce or, yeah, I mean, just Phil.
Yeah, probably just to stop people hunting me down more than anything else. But, Phil, it kind of goes for it. So, safety first when it comes to this.
Yeah, your security is top of my mind. So we're going to do a couple things here on the program today, which I know is still kind of in beta. We're figuring some stuff out as we go. But the concept here is ugly American, less ugly Englishman over there. We're going to just kind of bat around the 72 clubs that make up the second, third, and fourth tiers of the English pyramid. We're going to leave the Premiership talk to everybody watching Ted Lasso and everybody watching Rebecca Lowe over on Peacock. That's fine. Phil and I are just going to kind of bandy about and walk you through what we're seeing. And I know there's a lot of new supporters, new fans of EFL sides or the EFL in general here in America. So we're just trying to help you make sense of it best we can. That's kind of our marching orders, so to speak. Now, we're going to have a little bit of fun towards the end, I would think, because I gave Phil the homework assignment of making sure that he lets us know what some of the most inventive chants are at some of the grounds that he's been to. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. Want to dive in, though. We're going to jump around a little bit. I know normally we'd start at the championship level, then go League One, then go League Two. That makes sense chronologically. But Phil's side is Wycombe Wanderers, and Wycombe is off to a start that I don't think is quite fair. It's no wins, 2 losses. Lost 3-2 again. Sam Vokes scores a meaningless goal at the death again to cut it from 3-1, 3-2. It's like Groundhog Day. What's going on with your club?
Well, we played Wrexham away, first game. Wrexham just promoted, packed out stadium, loads of momentum. Lost that one, gave 2 goals away, move on. I think it was a tough one. But Birmingham City at home, first game at home for the season. Birmingham City, now this is going to sound like I'm making excuses, which I kind of am. Birmingham have spent about £15 million, if you believe what's written in the press, on transfers, which in League One level is a huge amount of money. In Premier League money, they can't have that down the back of their sofa. But in League One, 15 million is huge. I don't think Wycombe has spent 15 million in transfer fees in 140 years.
Right.
I'm fairly sure they haven't got anywhere near that. So there's a golfing class in terms of the money being spent. However, obviously football's not played on the balance sheet, but there were times on Saturday where they looked to be a very expensive squad. They had, I think, 80% possession rather than Wycombe's 20%, which then would lead you to believe the score should have been 4-5-0. But that's the beauty of football, is it was 3-2. It was really close at the end, and the Birmingham fans were worried. But they're going to be a great team, I think, Birmingham, as momentum builds, a bit like Ipswich were, who are now in the Premier League. As they get used to each other and work out the qualities they have, I think by Christmas they should be beating teams every week by 4 or 5 goals to nil. But there's no beauty in that, Josh, because they should be, because they spent a massive amount of money. So right. If you're a Birmingham fan, I'm sorry, if you're not topped by Christmas by 20 points, then you failed.
And for our American fans, that is the Tom Brady team, but he owns 3.3% of that bad boy. So it's not like it's really Tom Brady's team necessarily. He's tied to it. So on that subject, the guy that used to own Wycombe is now about to buy Reading, Rob Kuig. His side, and he was there for that. I saw he and his family made the trip to Majeski Stadium. They watched Reading just clobber Wigan. That one should have been 5-0. It looked like it ended up being 2-0. I love that Wigan's goalkeeper is named Sam Tickle. That makes me laugh every single time. Rob, meantime, looks like he's buying a very interesting side because Reading have been in the Premiership before. Reading's a big community, right? I mean, there's 400,000 people in Reading proper. So is that kind of a sleeping giant team? They should be much better than what they were last year, right?
They are a sleeping giant, and this game in particular underlines the point I made about Birmingham, because Reading, the sale hasn't gone through, the takeover hasn't gone through. They're still under transfer embargo. So the players they have are the same players they had last year, minus a couple they lost over the summer. and maybe some of the youngsters coming through the academy. So they've had to kind of start the season without any new additions. So this team that won on Saturday have done really, really well, because this is a team that hasn't been able to go out and buy attractive new players, etc., and work its way through. So, in this sense, maybe they're settled and they're all playing for each other. They're using that adversity to their advantage. But sometimes this stage of the season, a settled team can really do very well, because there isn't loads of disruption. There isn't loads of people having to get to know each other. And I don't know if you guys have the Mr. Men books in America, but here they're huge children's books. And there is a Mr. Tickle who has incredibly long arms. So as a goalkeeper, you'd want your goalkeeper to be called Mr. Tickle.
I just can't get over there's a Mr. Tickle that we're talking about. That's fantastic. 4 2-0 teams I'm seeing in the table here. 2 of them just promoted from League Two, and not Wrexham, by the way. Wrexham is not one of those teams. So it's Stockport County and Crawley Town. They've combined to allow 1 goal, I see. Stockport and Crawley right now. So educate me on that, if you would. I mean, is that just kind of fool's gold? That's just like a quick start randomly for 2 teams, or are they both actually really good?
Look, this is a small sample size here, because, we all love to sort of get really analytical about the tables, etc. But after 2 games, you could have had a bad refereeing decision. You could have had a sending off, or just a couple of bad mistakes in defence and lose a game, and you're like in 15th. Whereas if you have a bit of luck in the 2 games and you get through and you win both, then you're top of the table. You win nothing for being top after 2 games. You win nothing at all, apart from the fact you may drop down the table and think, I wish it was August again. But with Stockport, certainly they have momentum, because they were fantastic last season. They even beat Wrexham to the league title. So they've got momentum, which is a massive, massive force in sport. Crawley, you could argue that they got momentum as well because of the playoffs, but they seem to get rid of a lot of the team that got them out of League Two and have made loads of new signings, which makes this even more of an improbable good start, because they've had to sign a lot of new players, and they haven't signed big money players. They've kind of recruited really well. They found rough diamonds from non-league and in League Two, and a couple from League One as well. But they've managed to get those to stick in these first 2 games. But it's a really, really long season, and there'll be teams down the bottom who'll be tearing their hair out, because they'll see the table and be like, oh my God, we're going to get relegated. And there'll be teams at the top who'll be like, this is incredible. But we say in this country, you cannot trust the league table until 10 games. That's a perfect sample size. 2 games in, no, don't get worried or too happy.
With baseball over here, we say Memorial Day, which is end of May, that okay, that's the first time you open your eyes and check the standings. So I get it. I'm also looking at some teams sides in League One that haven't scored yet. And again, only 2 games, but Rotherham is one of them. Cambridge and Wigan are the others. So Rotherham last year hit earth with a moist thud, like they had fallen out of a plane. They got turbo relegated. They were so bad. But now Steve Evans, who I don't really know, but I've read about, and I guess everybody in England knows who this guy is as the manager. Why is he so volatile and famous? Is he famous because he's volatile?
We got a saying here in the UK called pantomime villain. That would probably involve you having to know what a pantomime is. These are sort of like farcical plays that go on around Christmas, and there's normally a bad person, and it's family friendly, and the bad person gets booed and whatever. So Steve Evans is the ideal panto villain of football. If he manages your team, you probably like him, because he tends to be quite successful. Everybody else hates him. Let me say that his body type isn't that you would associate with professional sport, but he's a manager. He's not running around the pitch, so he gets away with it. I think gravitationally gifted is probably the most diplomatic way of putting it. But look, the first game of the season they lost. He refused to shake the other manager's hand. The other day they drew 0-0. The first thing he said was, that's going to be the best result of Bristol Rovers this season, or something like that. He does not hold back when it comes to it. He creates sound bites. From a media point of view, he's a dream. If he was in a lift on his own, he would probably start a fight. He's that sort of guy. But we need characters like that in the game, because we're going to move on to Chance soon. But he would be very, very much have his own category in football, Chance, and not all of them would be to his credit.
And so he's not in shape, although I point out a circle is a shape. So,
that is, and he's a very great example of a circle. There's another Mr. Man book that would feature him very well. We won't go there.
I got to start doing research, deep dive research on all of those. Let me jump to championship where we probably should have started. That's my bad, but certainly Burnley has my attention at 2-0, outscoring everybody 9-1. They just thumped Cardiff 5-0, and an American, Ethan Horvath, the keeper for Cardiff, opened the scoring by basically swinging and missing on a ball rolled back to him. He just like went to kick it and simply missed it. I mean, I think you guys call it a howler. I mean, if it's a horribly embarrassing goal, I mean, that was like the most howling howler I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, and that's the problem with goalkeeping in football, because you can make a mistake at the other end of the pitch. You can miss it as a striker, and everyone just shrugs and goes, "Well, should have done better with that." But when a goalkeeper does that, it tends to kind of affect the game and therefore affect the fans' sort of general demeanour for the weekend. So goalkeepers carry a huge weight of responsibility. Hopefully next week he'll have a blinder and make everyone's weekend instead. But yeah, keeping is the most unforgiving position in football.
And Burnley and Sunderland, I'm saying, are basically legit here. I mean, I watched Sheffield Wednesday in person just annihilate Plymouth 4-0. And then it turned around and they got annihilated 4-0 by Sunderland. So, I mean, is Sunderland that good?
Sunderland, we talked about momentum earlier on, didn't we? They had no momentum coming into the season. They had no manager for about 3 or 4 months. And they've kind of got this sort of data-led thing, haven't they, where their owners they were looking for the right guy. And it took ages and ages and ages. The Sunderland fans were getting really worried. And then they appoint this guy called Regis Lebris, which to me sounds like something out of Viz comic. Again, look that one up on Google. You can learn lots in Viz. So yeah, he sounds like some sort of made-up sort of fictional character. And from a Sunderland point of view, he is, because he's won his first 2 games and he's going to be classed as a bit of a hero. But when they were appointed, they said, this is exactly the sort of guy that we want. The data shows that his sort of football will suit what we want to do and our players. And so far, so good. And, I know it's only 2 games, but 4-0 against Sheffield Wednesday, whose own manager, Danny Roller, German, is a fantastic coach and did really, really well last season. So that 4-0 is a big game. 4-0 beating Wayne Rooney's Plymouth is not a spectacular result. Wayne Rooney's record as a manager is appalling. But Sunderland beating Sheffield Wednesday 4-0, that made me sit up and take notice, definitely.
So we mentioned Cardiff City got just completely blitzed, and I'm looking at them and Preston North End as a combined 0-4 right now, outscored 12-0. Preston North End already got rid of a manager after 1 game. What the hell is that? Ryan Lowe is just gone after 1 game? Yeah,
so in England, we call this the managerial merry-go-round, which seems just to, continually go round and round and round for the whole season. There doesn't seem to be a period when it stops. So it's basically manager gets fired, they get off the merry-go-round. Someone else will fire someone else in a few weeks, and that manager will probably get back on the merry-go-round and have a good sort of 6-7 months with a team, get fired again, and so on and so forth. But yeah, Preston, 1 game. Wow. That's pretty bleak. They could have maybe looked at it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense from the outside looking in, because you give this guy all summer to, put a team together, their tactics, their training. They give him 1 game and they go, well, it's not working, let's get rid of him. But the window's still open. So if they do get someone else in, they're going to have to kind of back him and say, go and buy some of your own players. But yeah, it's, I don't know. It's not, you don't go into football management for the job security, Josh, certainly in English football.
Apparently not. Good Lord. Let me wind you down to League 2 here, and then I do want to get to some of those chants that you've promised that will make me Sam tickle myself a little bit here. I see 3 2-0 teams in League 2. I guess Walsall and Gillingham, that's fine. Bromley is my personal favorite pet team all of a sudden, because the more I research what they are and who they are and where they've been, this makes Wrexham look like the New York Yankees. Like they've been around Bromley for 132 years is not in professional football. They get this guy, Andy Woodman, who's a famous goalkeepers coach, I guess, at Arsenal. He comes over, is basically like living out of sounds like a porta potty, just trying to keep things together. I mean, you talk about slumming it. And he gets this Bromley outfit up to League 2. Not only are they there now for the first time in 132 years, they're 2-0, haven't given up a goal yet. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the managerial point. It's a crazy profession, but everyone wants to do it. This guy had a really great job at Arsenal as a coach. He probably could have done that for years. But the opportunity came knocking, and he thought, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go and sit in a porter cabin in South London and manage this unfashionable team. And boy, what a job's he done as well. It's incredible. First time ever in the Football League, and you can tell that their fans are loving it. And look, it's a long season, and I know we talked about you don't win anything for big in August, but if you can't enjoy this for them right now, then you've got a heart of stone. So again, momentum really. The league they just come out of, the National League, I think is the hardest division to get out of in football in England. It's really difficult. It's really competitive. They're all professional teams pretty much down there now. There's some big teams, and only the top team gets out automatically, then one other through the playoffs. So you've got to be really, really on it. So to get out of that division is huge. So I'm not surprised their momentum has continued.
At the other end of the table, I'm looking at Crewe Alexandra, and of all teams, MK Dons, two top teams from last year, are each 0-2. They've been outscored a combined 10-1. You and I were talking MK Dons just last week, and I thought, okay, well, I mean, this is a team that doesn't really belong in League Two. They're probably more a League One side with eyes on the championship. This is not going well.
Yeah, the words "belong" and MK Dons in the Football League are very rarely heard by English football fans. This is a bit of a red letter day for the majority of English football fans, because they see the MK Dons at the bottom of the table. A lot of fans would love to see them go to the very, very bottom of the period where they should have started and come back up. So, but looking at it, they've had a bad start to the season in terms of injury. They've just changed ownership as well. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, Crewe are the ones that are surprising because they lost in the playoffs, in the playoff final, and they often is a hangover actually when it comes to this, because you lose your pre-season a bit. The playoffs take an extra month. If you win them, fantastic, everyone's loving life. If you lose, then it's really brutal. And actually, teams can sometimes start slowly, and sometimes they don't recover at all. And they have a really, really poor season the next time out. It takes them a year to get it out of their system. So the playoffs can be brutal. And in the case of Crewe Alexandra, it certainly appears to be the case.
One last note, just as I look at the table here, Tranmere Rovers, this would be like a documentary about a cardboard factory or something. They have not scored and they have not allowed a goal. They've played 2 0-0 draws. I mean, what the... That's why Americans aren't so keen, as you say, on this whole football thing, on this soccer thing. We just think every game is 0-0. It's very rare, right, to play 2 of those bad boys in a row.
Yeah, I mean, if you pan that out across an entire season, imagine if you get to 46 games and you finish on the same amount of goals as you let in, like mid-table, and you'd probably think, I've spent maybe $4,000 or $5,000 doing this, following this, and at the end of it all, what have we really got to show for it? Apart from all the fun you've had along the way, of course. But yeah, football can do that sometimes. It can be binary. It can be really, really hard watch. But you, as a fan, it's a rite of passage, Josh. You have to go through those periods, because it means that when you beat someone 4-5-0 or you win something like that, that's what gives you the kind of frame of reference to understand that you need to go absolutely wild and crazy in these situations. So it'll be hard for Tranmere at the moment, but it's not as bad as losing 4-5-0 every week.
No,
but yeah, 0-0. Yeah, it can be a bit sort of like, okay, especially if you've got young kids and you've got to say, look, we're going to football again Saturday, and they kind of give you a bit of a sideways look, and you think, are you sure? But they'll come good. Don't worry.
If you want to see the rainbow, you got to put up with the rain. Dolly
Exactly.
Parton. Yeah,
there we are.
Right. Yeah. Well, so, okay, let's get to the chants. We got a couple minutes left. I want to hear those that you've heard personally that have stuck with you over the years. Because I said to you last week, I go to Sheffield Wednesday, I hear all these chants, and I'm kind of like humming the tune, so to speak, but I don't know what the words are. So it just dawned on me, like, okay, this is really cool that everybody knows the words and lyrics to these mini songs. What are some of the great ones?
The ones that really stick with me are the massive songs. So like they get repurposed. Someone in the pub somewhere rewrites the lyrics, and the lyrics sound even better than the original lyrics. So at Wycombe Wanderers, we had a striker called Adebayo Akinfenwa, the strongest man in football. If you've not heard of him, you'd certainly recognise him if you saw him. He was the beast. He was fantastic. Lord, yeah, and his chant was to the tune of "Don't You Want Me, Baby" by the Human League, which is a great song. So it was Bayo Akinfenwa, oh. And if you walk past the pub with 1,000 people in singing that, it really is quite powerful and also beautiful, Josh.
And point of order, I'm guessing Human League garnered no royalties off of this rewrite.
They're Sheffield Wednesday fans. Absolutely not. So they weren't getting any money from Wycombe Wanderers for that. But I take it as a huge compliment. If I'd written that song, which sadly didn't, it's a great compliment that they kind of date that. The other really, really good one is a striker called Will Grigg, who's just got back into the Football League with Chesterfield. He played for Northern Ireland when he was playing for Wigan. And there's a tune called Freed from Desire by Gala, which is like a 90s dance record. And that got repurposed for Will Grigg. Every striker now in the Football League has their version of this chant. But it was Will Grigg's on fire. Your defence is terrified. Will Grigg's on fire. And then everyone would then sing the rest of the song and dance and go crazy. And sadly, he's not been on fire for many years. But other names have now replaced him in that chant. But it's wonderful. And that song, to talk about the royalties, it went back into the chart again several times because people are like, this is a really good song. And then we went and bought it. But that's always good. But the thing for me about chants in this country, Josh, is the humour. And it's dark sometimes.
It can be gallows humor and inappropriate humor, I understand. Yeah.
It's a lot of that as well. And also, you know, when there's a couple of thousand people coming up and singing fantastic songs, and they can sometimes be very fixated with your rival who might not even be in that. They might not be playing each other. They could be playing someone else. So Birmingham fans on Saturday at Wycombe, for example, spent most of the game chanting 2,000 of it in unison all together, shit on the Villa, which in itself is very self-deprecating because they're their local rivals. They hate each other. Birmingham City in the third tier for the first time in 30 years. The late kickoff in the Premier League that day was Aston Villa winning away at West Ham, who were very much having a great time in football. And you could argue that Birmingham are not, but their fans didn't care about that. They just spent the entire time singing about how much they hate their rivals. So there's that one. And then to me...
Give me like an inappropriate one. I mean, one that we just are embarrassed to like.
Well, there's always one that sticks in my mind because I like dark humour, and I think humour is a great human reflex for dealing with stuff that can be quite difficult. So there's a goalkeeper here, famous goalkeeper, sadly no longer with us. He passed away from cancer a couple of years ago, but a great character called Andy Gorham. The local press reported that he was suffering with mild schizophrenia. No joking matter, obviously. The next game after that press report came out, he came out the tunnel and was greeted by the opposition fans with the chant, "There's only two Andy Gorhams," which I think is just genius. And okay, it's bad taste, whatever you like.
It's horrible taste, yeah.
It's horrible taste, but you can't help but laugh.
Right. Well, laugh, clown, laugh, I guess. Which, by the way, for your Wycombe Wanderers, that's what you got to do right now, too. 2 games played, no wins, no points, but it looks like still a pretty good year ahead for you. We got to go. We're out of time. They're playing us off. See you again next week.
Cheers, Josh. Will do, mate.
All right, man. Thanks for everything. That's Phil Catchpole. I'm Josh Lewin. This is EFL Through American Eyes.